All right, just a few snippets from some people speaking since the pandemic concerning this pandemic.
They really do need help, not to the extent of event, but they need help. But these other people, like this person who wasn't COVID multiple times, you know, and a lot of them are on either Medicaid or Medicare. They're poor. They're from, you know, a lower class. We're at a public hospital. They need the funding. So take them. They take them. And they tell them pretty much that if they don't get on an event, then they're probably not going to survive. But the reality is, if they get on that event, the likelihood of them walking out the hospital is slim to none.
And can I ask you, what, like, PEEP are they on, and is that being mandated or specified what the pressure is on the vent?
Here's the thing with this. So you don't have actual doctors that know critical care, ICU doctors on these floors. There's a dentist, and there are residents with these. So residents are essentially students, and they have no idea what they're doing. Like, I had to police, actually today I had to police a resident because he wrote an order for me to run Versed, which is a medicine that you have to be very careful with because it can kill someone, at like quadruple the speed of what you should be running it at the dose. And had I not known that, then I would have easily killed the patient. And it would have been okay under their COVID standards. So everything is kind of a wash. Nobody's held accountable for anything, and these people that are at events are essentially being like, these residents are like practicing their skills on them. So they're practicing central lines, they're practicing like invasive procedures that are really unnecessary.
What is the
All right, now that is New York City.
They are cold and they don't care anymore. It's the blind leading the blind. What is happening is that they're putting people on nasal cannula. If they require more than 6 liters of nasal cannula, they get intubated, they go on the vent, or they get trached if there's not enough vents. They don't get high flow, no non-rebreather, no non-invasive ventilation, no CPAP, no BiPAP. They're on a closed system, the ventilator, versus a CPAP or a BiPAP, for fear that it will spread the virus.
This is non-invasive ventilation here, CPAP or BiPAP. This is a mask that gets strapped on you, and we can help you breathe with that. We're not allowed to use those, okay? We're finally opening up to where we can use them a little bit, but for the most part, since COVID came out, they said absolutely not. That's going to cause the virus to spread all over the place by spraying aerosols everywhere, and so we can't use it. You have to let the patient crash and go straight to a ventilator, okay? Traditionally, that's not the way we would treat a patient. We also have aerosolized medications, bronchodilators. We're not allowed to use those either. So everything that we would traditionally do, we're not allowed to do. Every patient that comes in, no matter what their history, is labeled a COVID under investigation. So if that patient dies, that becomes a COVID death.
And this guy.
All right.
They say hospitals on the front lines of the pandemic are engaged in a heated private debate over a calculation few have encountered in their lifetimes. How to weigh the, quote, save at all costs approach to resuscitating a dying patient against the real danger of exposing doctors and nurses to the contagion of coronavirus.
See, and this is how they get away with it. A lot of this is New York City, the hub of the pandemic, alleged pandemic, and the highest city population in America. And Governor Cuomo wanted as many vents as he could get his hands on. But they've also scared doctors, dentists into, like, if you don't put patients on a vent and keep a closed system, you're going to get it, you don't have enough protection, and you're going to die.
And what here is a morbidity factor, not necessarily
This is
mortality factor.
CV-19 can create different symptoms through DARPA bioweaponized neural nano delivery systems.
I want to make people sick. And what I do here is the virus is not necessarily the bug. The virus is what I put over the internet. Let me show you how I can crash a system pretty easily. I affect key individuals here, here, and here.
And then I take another community in the back of the room. I affect key individuals there. And then I take another community. I affect key individuals there. And then I do what every good attributional group does. I beat my chest and take credit for it. What I put out over the internet is, this is a virus, bacteria, an agent that I have infiltrated into your fill in the blank. I say it's a weapon of mass destruction, and what I tell you it's going to do is it's going to produce paranoia, anxiety, and sleeplessness. What I've just done is I've recruited every paranoid hypochondriac to think that they have whatever that is. I've used salient and sentinel cases, and I create essentially a legion of what's known as the worried well. They now flood emergency rooms. They flood their clinicians. The CDC responds back and says, no, 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 there is no such a thing. And I've created a schism of trust between the population and the polis. It's both a short and a long wars effect. Moreover, I can create particular neuromicrobiologicals that may have a much longer duration of action. For example, modified Zika virus. And what I can then do is, as a consequence of that, is I can affect subsequent generations to incur a public health morbidity and mortality effect that then creates an increased economic and perhaps social burden. Long war scenario. If I wanted to do something that's a little bit more proximate, I can utilize nanoparticulate matter. Now, we can utilize nanoscience to create much better drugs, to get them where they got to go in the brain. I can create nanoscience and nanotechnology to be able to escort certain drugs across the proliferant barrier, which is the blood-brain barrier and cerebrospinal fluid barrier. So I get these things where they got to go. But I can also utilize nanoparticulate matter in a very indiscriminate way. The idea here is that I can get something called high CNS aggregation material that is essentially invisible to the naked eye and even to most scanners because it is so small that it selectively goes through most levels of filter porosity. These are then inhaled either through the nasal mucosa or absorbed through the oral mucosa. They have high CNS affinity. They clump in the brain or in the vasculature, and they create essentially what looks like a hemorrhagic diathesis, in other words, a hemorrhage predisposition or a clot predisposition in the brain. What I've done is I've created a stroking agent. And it's very, very difficult to gain attribution to do that. I can use that on a variety of levels, from the individual to the group, highly disruptive. And in fact, this is one of the things that has been entertained and examined to some extent by my colleagues in NATO and to those who are working on the use of neurobiological sciences to create populational disruption. Very, very worried about the potential for these nanoparticulate agents to be CNS aggregating agents to cause neural disruption, either as hemorrhagic and vascular disruptors or as actual neural network disruptors, because they...
They got it all figured out. Bottom line is, for the digital reset and for us to get vaccinated and chipped, and it's pharma. Pharma is the deep state. I'm going to leave links.